on our bus to join on board Master Atlan, Chapter 80, Who We Were. Penny, can you hear me? Slowly stepping forward, she focused only on the sweet freckled girl as the world faded away. The fight had started with the crowd cheering and hoping for the best. As they called out both of their names, Penny reciprocated those feelings quickly for the crowd while she just tried to quiet the conversations with Sasuke and John and everyone else that filled her head. Her body tensed and pushed itself, dodging the many swords the Atlas girl commanded without even touching them. She was strong and certainly had earned her spot in the final. So with the rest of them, it was exhilarating, and for the first time in days, Pyrrha paradoxically found peace and comfort in fighting and battle. But then something happened. Penny summoned her swords above her head, and they multiplied. What had to have been no more than 10 swords had suddenly turned into 24, and then 5 dozen, and then 100, with more appearing every second. Suddenly, Pyrrha was surrounded on all sides, seeing no way out of it than to force the swords back with whole polarity. But then she felt it, the clanking response of metal that wasn't meant to bend or bend. Pyrrha's eyes widened in shock and horror as Penny's had settled into much the same. The hundreds of swords that surrounded her vanished, leaving only a few flying back at Penny, and some of them pelted through her body as others entangled her in wires. With the sharp magnetic push, they had been sent back. With there was little that could be done to stop them, and in the end, something had to give. Penny! Pyrrha whimpered, dropping to her knees and reaching out to the girl. Her lifeless, dull eyes stared back unblinkingly as she laid on the floor in pieces. Pyrrha's mind braced. She knew the girl was a robot. Her mind considered that she needed to feel guilty because she wasn't actually a person. The redhead recoiled in horror and pushed all those horror thoughts down as quickly as they dared to pop up. Pyrrha's mental state and in control were a whirlwind of undecipherable madness. A powerful gale force wind washed over the tournament stage and sent the robot girl's body's parts sailing off the stage. Pyrrha watched the Penny's remains fly away until they slammed into the wall, leading into the seats. When she looked over, she finally noticed how everyone was panicking and running away while pointing in her direction. The fierce warrior slowly turned her head and looked up. It was the largest Nevermore she had ever seen. Its wingspan was wide enough to cover the entire Amity stage, and its talon had broken through the barrier set between the stage and the seating area. Pyrrha's instincts and years of training were telling her to grab her weapon, prep her shield, and defend against the first strike it made before sliding under its leg to escape him. But her heart and mind were drowning them out and drawing a blank, hurting Penny, causing so much panic and distress. It was so terrible that Pyrrha had just froze from the shock. She just stared up and watched the monster raise its beak before lunging down to bite her. Pyrrha! A red blur struck into its side and knocked the giant bird off course. Pyrrha looked up and spotted a red hooded figure falling out of the air between her and the Nevermore. Tears in her silver eyes, and one of Penny's blades held tightly in her hands. Ruby! Pyrrha! She was yanked out of her stupor when she felt her partner grab her arm and pull her into his embrace. With a startled gasp, she looked up as John hugged her closely and looked down at her. Come on! We gotta get out of here! John, come on, John. Pyrrha dragged herself up to her feet and looked up at her partner as her eyes widened. I'm so sorry for everything. Now isn't the time for that. John yelled over the Nevermore, screeching as she dragged her further down the stage. We have to get away from here. I did this. This is my fault, Penny, and all these people. I'm sorry. Her breathing came in short and ragged gasps as she lowered her head in horror. I didn't mean for this to happen. I know you didn't, Pyrrha. I never believed you would do this, but it still happened because of me. Everyone is going to... Pyrrha! His calm, caring voice, in spite of the fear and chaos around them, surprised her most. She looked up at her best friend, his expression sad and pitying, but not angry or betrayed, like she expected. He gently ran his hands under her eye, clearing away the tears that stained her cheeks as he whispered, I'm not going to leave you. The calling and screech of the Nevermore was sharply interrupted by the repeated pounding of metal upon flesh. What followed was not a deathly howl of a beast preparing to rampage, but the dying screech of an animal being sliced to pieces by dozens of weapons that once... At once, slowly Peter turned back. No one here was ever going to leave you. Standing atop the dead Nevermore, as it dissipated into nothing, were her teammates and friends, as well as students from every school that had taken up arms and slayed the Grim when the chance was given. Ren, Nora, Olive, Noctix, and dozens all others stepped off the body of the beast and joined her on the stage. Peter's eyes immediately focused in on her red-hooded friend as Ruby stepped off the Nevermore with her scythe in hand and Penny's sword at her side. Without even thinking, she stepped up to the short girl and shook her head. Ruby, I'm sorry, I never meant to go this far. I thought I was being attacked, and then I pushed back, and when I did, Pia felt a strike to her chest, but instead of the punch she was expecting, she looked down to see Ruby hugging her tightly with her head in her chest. The young scythe wielder kept her face buried, but spoke loud enough for Pia to hear. It was Emerald and Mercury. They were the ones behind this. They did something to Yang too. You aren't to blame for this. Those words from the young friend would have eased her consciousness a great deal if she took them so easily. But Pyrrha had a sinking feeling that the reason Ruby was burying her face in her armor was to hide the tears that she was shedding. Several Nevermore and Griffins followed the lead of the giant beast and flew into the arena to cause havoc. A group of them dived down on the students in hopes of catching them off guard. But before they could reach, they were hit by a couple well-placed rounds and fireballs. Children, this is no time to dawdle. Port's boots slammed onto the stage as he walked up to the center of it with his axe bust in hand. He's right, students. Oobleck walked beside his cohort with his flaming club in hand. This is no time to be woeful. The Grim are invading, and people are in dire need of help. Do you know what that means? It means it's time for you to put all your training to good use. This is what we've been preparing you for. My young huntsman and huntresses, don't disappoint us. But Professor, if we leave now, if we leave now, it'll just be you two, and then a swarm of Grim coming at us from all sides, in the midst of a panic and dread. My dear, poor chuckled as he cocked his weapon. Has no one been listening to my stories? That was a regular Thursday evening when I was but a boy. There are others outside this arena, fellow hunters and civilians in true need of your aid. Oobleck yelled over the fireballs. So he sent hurtling towards the beast around them. Several Grim dropped out of the sky and still barely a dent that had been made in the overlapping blackness. I understand your hesitation at facing this overwhelming threat, but there are people putting their trust in you to carry on ahead and help them. So go on and show them what you have been training for. I wish you the best of luck, my students. With those words of encouragement from the teachers, the gathering of students headed for the exit where everyone else had retreated to. Pyrrha was handed her weapon and shield by Tintin and Naruto, and patting her shoulders and ensuring their support before they ran ahead. She and John reached the edge of the arena before she paused and looked back. Pyrrha, I'm sorry, but I need to do something first. Pyrrha jumped off the stage and ran along the space between the seats in the arena. As she ran it, she spotted what she had been looking for. Penny, in pieces, left atop each other unceremoniously after being thrown off by the Nevermore. The screeching of Griffins drew her attention, and she raised her sword to fight before a large wall of gravel and dust shot up between her and the Grim. She looked back and spotted Gar along with some of her other friends, having stayed behind to allow her this moment. Pyrrha holstered her weapons and bent down beside the decomposed android. She slid the amputated arms and legs off the girl's torso and looked down into Penny's lifeless eyes. A chill ran up her back as she remembered not 10 minutes ago. This girl had been full of life and excited at the idea of facing her. Whatever she was, human or android, she was no longer alive. And if the people who had stayed behind with Pyrrha during the attack were any indication, her loss would be keenly felt by all of them. The champion slowly reached forward and covered Penny's eyes, sliding her eyelids back down to close them forever. She stood back up and stepped back, allowing Ruby the chance to rest Penny's sword back down with its owner. When she did, she stepped back and stood by Pyrrha's side. The redhead reached down and circled her arm around Ruby's shoulder to pull her into her side. She didn't make any note of the soft sobs Ruby made after lowering her head, and she hoped the hooded girl would not mind as her own eyes watered as well. Hunting, run! Get out of here! And Blake and Weiss struggled against the flood of Russian people that ran in the opposite direction of where they need to go. The people were in a panic and doing whatever they could to escape from the monsters swooping down on them from above. Some people weren't so fortunate to escape, screaming out for help as they were hoisted away into the night. Blake fired up at every winged Grim she could see before they could lift off with someone in tow. But she cursed herself as she realized for every person she saved from abduction didn't she miss someone being taken away to a cruel death? The cat finally just shut her eyes in frustration as she and Weiss emerged from the crowd and regrouped. How did this happen so quickly? All the Grimm that were just on the edge of the city after Yang's accident had been emboldened by this new wave of terror. Weiss rationalized, trying to stay calm even as her fear was growing more obvious in her tone. And after what happened to Penny, why would General Ironwood make something like that possible? I don't know. Why Snoop Blake wasn't asking her personally for the inner workings of Atlas and its military, but even still, the Schneehers was flabbergasted by the idea of her kingdom creating artificial humans and introducing them into regular life like that. She closed her mouth with a snap and shook her head. It doesn't matter. We need to reconvene with the others. Ruby isn't getting my calls about what Yang. Have you, Blake? Yang. The call finally connected through the scroll as Blake heard her partner's frantic voice. I'm so glad you picked up. Is Ruby with you? No, she went to Amity while Weiss and I stayed in the fairgrounds. Weiss has been trying to reach her, but we've gotten no luck. She heard nothing from the other side of her screen. It's Ruby. You know she can handle herself. I know. Just it'd be better if we were all together during this. She shared the thought, and one look at Weiss showed she felt the same way. Her eyes narrowed as she looked up at Beacon. We need to meet up. Okay, I'm trying to make my way out of the. Yang. The call suddenly cut off and left her with static. Yang. As unease filled her chest to the point where she felt sick. Blake's expression hardened as she sprinted towards the academy, while with Weiss hot on her trail. The two huntresses sprinted back to their school as quickly as they could before sliding to a stop. Their eyes widened in horror as they saw all the familiar monsters fill the courtyard. Nevermores and griffins fell through the air as Beowulfs and Ernest raged on the ground. And amongst all these monsters were fauns dressed in grey and donning grim masks to hide their faces. The White Fang had infiltrated Beacon during the invasion. Weiss drew Mertonaster and stepped up to her teammate's side. Blake, the black-clad girl, didn't answer her, but slowly drew a gamble shroud in both hands with white knuckles. She had wanted to find out a way to stop the White Fang before they did something irredeemable and cross a line that would mark them forever. But it was too late. They had brought havoc to her home and her family. Hunting, cutting off the calls so abruptly was probably going to send Blake into a fit, but Yang didn't want to attract unwanted attention. Looking down by her feet, Swai looked cautious and careful with his ears pressed down on his head. The blonde peeked around the corner again. The alphabet wolf stalked the halls of Beacon like a wild animal in new hunting grounds. The beast stepped forward and looked in every room before shuffling to the next one. This whole thing didn't make any sense. Not just the fact that Penny had actually been a robot acting like a human around them this entire time, or that she might have been some pawn to help set up this attack. But this Beowulf in the halls of Beacon Grim were fast, and one of the first things that she learned when she was training was that in an event with large amounts of negativity been released at once, Grim flooded in far faster than expected. However, the Grim should have been swarming into the streets of Vale where the negativity was highest. Why was the Beowulf coming to Beacon? How did the Beowulf get far enough into the school to be roaming the halls? These were questions she needed answered, but not at this moment. Once the Beowulf had shambled forward, Yang took a deep breath to calm her breathing. She stepped out as quietly as possible and crouched walked along the halls with Swai following after her. And she needed to get out of Beacon and find her team. She was worried about her teammates. She was worried about her friends. She was worried about Ruby. Yang paused as a quiet whimpering reached her ears. The brother looked down at Swai to see that little Corky had also noticed the noise and was rushing over to see where it came from. Careful to make sure she didn't make a noise, she followed her dog until they searched another corner, and she spotted Sakura crouching the corner and trembling out of sight of the Grim. Yang had only met the girl a few times during her stay with the skiing doctor at Beacon, but she knew she was studying medicine, not fighting. There was nothing she could do for the disaster happening right now, so she probably stayed in her room. However, since Grim were roaming the halls and looking everywhere, the pink-haired girl must have evacuated and tried to hide where they couldn't find her. It was a solid plan, except the Grim didn't find people by sight, and the poor girl was a beacon of fear at the moment. Yang watches a Beowulf prowl along the ground and slowly approached the small ditch in the wall Sakura hid in. As the monster approached, Sakura heard it come in and covered her mouth before she could scream. She had to save Sakura, but if she used her weapons, she would probably draw another Grim. Concussive kinetic blasts were perfect for killing monsters, but they were also very, very loud. Yang's eyes turned to the side as she considered how much noise that would make. She shrugged her shoulders and decided to do it anyway. She lifted the locker over her head and spiked it across the hallway, watching it sail into the beowulf's skull and crush it with a sickening crunch. Sakura, making her way over and kneeling in front of the terrified girl, she watched as terrified green eyes took her in and recognized her. Are you okay? Yang, what are you doing here? Madame Tsunade, she told me to stay at the beacon. Her teeth wouldn't stop chattering until she closed her eyes and focused them. She wanted to stay safe in case anything like yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry. She looked guilty by bringing it up, but the blonde huntress just steeled her eyes and surely didn't matter at the moment. I don't think she prepared for something like this to happen. Her eyes widened. But she's in Vale. Do you think Vale's definitely under attack? There was just no way the city was fine and safe while only Beacon was under siege. But there are hunters and soldiers and androids in every street, so don't worry about her. We need to worry about ourselves. Sakura, I don't get it. How did Grim get into Beacon? I don't know, Yang whispered. And what are Grim doing? They aren't just destroying everything. They look like they're searching for something. It's either students or don't know and don't care. We need to move. Sakura nodded and tried to stand, but couldn't lift herself up. Her knees were shaking and had given out. She was terrified of leaving this little spot she found, because that meant she'd have to face whatever new terror waited around the corner. Yang understood why she was scared. Hell, she was scared too. They were in the middle of a grim invasion, and she had no idea where her team was. But instead of fretting, she took a deep breath and remembered what Crow and Mito had said to her earlier. To show them who she really was, not just the mistake she made. Sakura, do you see this little guy? She scooped Swai up and held him in front of the frightened visitor. With a weak hiccup, Sakura looked into the innocent, loving eyes of Swai as the corgi panting and licked her nose. This is my dad's dog. Swai, he's tough and can handle a lot of stress, but I can't risk losing sight of him during all this panic. Can you hold on to him? Without waiting, she forced the dog into the panicked apprentice's arms and watched as her fear subsided. Sakura was no longer focusing on the horror around her, but the small animal in her arms that drew her attention away from it. If you look after Swai, then he'll look after you, okay? With a small shuffle, it's sniffle the pink-haired girl nodded, and Yang grinned in relief. She extended her amber silica over her arm, over one arm, and offered Sakura her other. There are going to be a lot of hurt people that need help. I can handle fighting the Grim, and so I will watch your back. But they need you to help them like we can't. Are you ready to do what you've been trained for? Tears still pricked her eyes, but Sakura nodded with more determination in her eyes than she had a moment earlier. She reached up and squeezed her hand. Then let's go. Hunting. Alpha Beowulf classification. Elder Grim. Size 2 to 4 meters. Features long bone fragments, dense armor, long claws, sharp fangs, powerful legs, monstrous roars. Strategies separate from pack, upward lunges and slashes. Focus on single weaknesses and exploit until victorious. The Beowulf's file repeated through Ironwood's head on loop as he was surrounded by 3 alphas, while innocent civilians cowered and hid where they could. He knew he was just distracting himself by revising the data for the Grim by memory. Otherwise, he'd be reeling from shock at the attack and the loss of pain for all of them to see. One alpha lurched at his back while he was daydreaming and swung at his head. The large claw of the beast carried a lot of force behind it, but was stopped rather easily against Ironwood's right arm. The general didn't even budge as he held the claw back before pushing it away, drawing his pistol from its holster and firing a shot into the head of the Grim behind him. Its head jerked back violently from the shot placed right under its jaw. The general twisted around, buried his fist into the place he guessed its gut was, and watched as the Beowulf doubled over by his shoulder, pressing the barrel of his pistol against its head while it was lower. He pulled the trigger and reduced its head to chunks of black. The other 2 alphas rushed him after, witnessing how he slaughtered the first one. It was actions like this which made him believe these monsters were mindless. The seasoned huntsman waited for the beast to get closer as he watched them lunge through the air. The Atlas general ducked under their snapping maws and slid underneath as they sailed over his head. As they landed, Ironwood charged in and pistol whipped one across the snout. He lashed with a kick into the other one's knees, letting his powerful prosthetic do the rest. As the werewolf's legs snapped under his boot, as one toppled over with a whine of pain, Ironwood turned to the other and started to beat it senseless. He knocked the monster's head back and forth with his fist and pistol. The Grim tried its best to fight back, but fell under the Atlas General's relentless barrage. Ironwood cracked the armor on its head, shoved his knee into its body, smacked it down on the ground, and pressed his pistol against its temple. With the 3 rapid shots, the Beowulf toppled over and disintegrated. Ironwood spun around and used his pistol to block the snapping jaw of the Beowulf. The beast's teeth scratched against the length of his gun, and its tongue lashed out to run over his fingers. Ironwood gritted his teeth and snarled before he reached up and grabbed the Grim's bottom jaw, and with a yell he yanked down, tearing the jaw away along with a foot of flesh and fur still connected to it. The monster went limp against him, and the general tossed the beast away before wiping himself off. He looked over and saw the Grim he killed were fading away at the foot of students leaving the arena. Ironwood caught his breath and checked the ammunition for due process before nodding. What's the situation back in the arena? Professor Port and Professor Oblique stayed behind to fend off the waves of Grim. That's a lot, but I know we can rely on them to handle it. Ironwood refilled his pistol and lowered it down before turning to the group of students from each academy. The general might have felt swell of pride at seeing all the students from around Remnant banded together to fight this threat, but this was no time for sentimentality. The Grim are charging on all fronts, Beaconville and Amity as well. We're evacuating everyone down into Vale as quickly as we can. But when they're down, they'll still need protection from the Grim. So what should we do, sir? I can't make that decision for you. James looked over all the young hunters in training, watching him expectantly as he answered them clearly. All of these people are terrified that what they know is starting to crash down around them. Whether they retreat to Beacon or Vale, they will be met with more terror and more grim. So you have to change. So you have a choice to make that will decide how you continue on for the rest of your life. Will you stand up during this fight, or will you turn away? I wouldn't judge you for whatever choice you make. This is the first real tragedy you will be facing, and in times like this, whether you can fight or not will be tested. So what will you choose? Ironwood had fully expected a few of these young students who hadn't seen real panic to take the offer to walk away. It was easy to say that you would act nobly during a terrible event, but it was an entirely different matter faced with one. He was ready to see some of them walk away before it was too late. He didn't expect such strong, resolute stares from all of them in response. With a chuckle, he shook his head, reprimanding himself for expecting anything less from the next generation. All right, huntsmen and huntresses. We are prioritizing 2 courses of action above all else. Protect civilians, enslay Grim. Amity has already been evacuated, so that leaves only 2 points of interest left, Beacon and Vale. We must protect the Beacon at all costs, otherwise we risk losing the tower and communication around Remington. But as long as the people in Vale are in danger, then the Grim presence can only get worse. So we need to put up a front in 2 spots. And so should we split up, half of us to Beacon and the other half of us to Vale? No, Ironwood disagreed. Right now, the people fighting in Vale are capable huntsmen and huntresses by my soldiers and Atlas androids. They require the help of the people who can look after themselves and work alongside unfamiliar fighters easily. I'm not sure which location is more difficult, but don't go into a fight that would leave you at a disadvantage just to bolster numbers. Make the choice you think is right, and then start heading out. What about you, General? My flagship just got shot down. Just shot down another one of my carriers and is firing wildly downwards. The students looked over and finally noticed the panic at that one Atlas ship was out of formation and attacking others. I have a sinking suspicion that it's been commandeered. So once everyone is off Amity, I'm going to go over there and put my gun in that pirate's face. Many students made a quick mental note to never get on the general's bad side. While the students helped escort people into airships and bullhits, they decided where they were going to fight. Noctix stood together as their leader looked between his teammates. So, what are we thinking? I want to protect Beacon. It's our home now, Kiba said. If we lose the CCT, the whole world will be separated. Tenten nodded. We can't afford to lose it. Naruto nodded in agreement before they all turned to the last teammate. Sasuke, the people in Vale don't have a lot of time. The damages to the school can be fixed, but if we lose them, Lucia shook his head. They need help. Okay, so we're going to Beacon or Vale. I think you all should go to Beacon while I help in Vale. Well, listen, you heard what General Wood said. The people going into Vale have to be able to handle themselves and work in time with others. I think I can do that. I'm not saying that you all can't do it either. It's just some of us need to hold down Beacon, and others need to make sure people are safe. Sasuke looked at his best friend and saw understanding in his eyes. He still didn't look too happy about what he was suggesting. So we leave you alone to fight for Vale by yourself? No, I'll keep fighting down there until I'm sure these things can be handled without me, and then I'll head to Beacon. Or if you secure Beacon for first come on down and help me. There's a lot we need to do. So keep aside and shook his head before patting his teammate on the shoulder. You're lucky we can trust you to look after yourself, man. Otherwise, we'd be dragging you back with us. You do what you can, but stop if you get overwhelmed. Tintin warned while showing her concern for her partner. And you don't have to win the whole fight. Sasuke nodded between his friends before looking at Naruto. The whiskered faunus tried to show unwavering confidence, but his ears were laid flat, a telltale sign that he was worried or anxious. Without a word, Uchiha just held his hand out between the rest of his teammates and waited. Slowly they all reached in and placed one hand atop each other, silently promised to one another to come back home and see each other again. Hunting, to whoever is absconding with my flagship, I will give you this one chance to stand down now without punishment. Toshirika, do you hear me? Stop this now, or I swear. King came down over the speaker and reduced it to a crumbling mess, releasing random sparks. Boring conversation anyway. The thief leaned back to the console and looked at his accomplices. So we've got one angry Ironwood on his way to claim his ship. Any suggestions? The tiny girl besides the gargantuan faunus jumped on her toes and waved her arm and waved her hand wildly. Yes, a cute little assassin with the blood on her hands. What's your idea? Neil skipped forward, blew a raspberry up at Khan mockingly as the horse faunus rolled his eyes and then drew her scroll out for Roman to take. He looked at the screen as a black winged piece of flash over it before he shrugged and injected in. The screens and lights around the flagship flashed red and activated an alarm as Roman looked around curiously. Suddenly, yells and screams cried out from every terminal as Atlas soldiers called in. What's happening? Control! The Master turning their guns on us and firing. We need you to take them offline. They're immense civilians. We can't stop them. Don't. I think I'll call this treachery of Atlas automatons. Now that's something interesting to hear. Roman watched the radar as Ironwood's ships filled with androids turned their guns on him until they fell out of the sky. He patted his young partner on the head before looking back. Honey, you want to join in the fun? I'm taking a pod and going down to the city. The noble guard turned his back on the criminals and walked away. Don't cause too much trouble for my people while you're at it. You want to go down into the grim-infested city? I want to rejoin my people, Han corrected. Today is the beginning of our victory, and I will stand beside them at this crucial hour. Sure, enjoy the fun. The two criminals looked at each other skeptically. What a drama king, am I right? Neil made a show of running her fingers along her neck. Yeah, he is a total buzzkill. The multi-haired girl shook her head and repeated the action slower and more deliberately. What? No, we can't kill him. I mean, we can, but we shouldn't. Remember that all the snarling little beasties would throw a fit if one of their leaders or messiahs or whatever were to die. Don't focus on that. Roman pointed down at the terminals. Why don't we just cause a little more havoc, huh? Hunting. Osplin stared blankly at his screen as reports and alerts chimed in within seconds of each other. The numbers of horrors he had seen in his life were vast, and he thought he had grown used to them in time. But once again, when faced with calamity like this, he could only feel his stomach drop. Grim attacking civilians, White Fang raiding in the streets and in his school. Atlas androids turning on the people. A flagship that had been apprehended and James hadn't called in since he warned he was going to take it back. Once more, the consummate had to wrestle with the idea that he could have stopped this. One glance aside, and maybe he could have seen the villain in the shadows. One extra question, and maybe he could have realized that James had entered a robot to join the competition. These thoughts assaulted his conscious relentlessness as he watched Phil burn. Husband were already being ordered to mitigate the damage. Crow and Glinda had gone out into the city to help him. Jiraiya and Tsunade had reported in already in the streets and fending off more Grim than either had ever seen before. Peter and Bartholomew said that they were holding down Amity while the last people were leaving, and here he was in his office. He couldn't leave because he couldn't risk leaving the tower abandoned, or they risk losing communication around the world. But even so, the older headmaster felt his nerves great and hand tightened with frustration he hadn't felt in a long time. Osman made to rush into the room after his patrol around the school. The students from Amity have arrived and are helping to hold back the threat, but the White Fang and Grim are already in our halls. We tried holding them back, but some wings have already been lost. We'll recover the school properly after we finish evacuating the people. What about bullheads and airships? The main launch pad is still being cleared out, but we have a landing zone on the side. We're ferrying people out of. Minto stepped up to the desk and slid his knife away, but the people are scared and drawing more Grim in. We can't do this fast enough, and then we can only do what we can. Osman, I don't think the school will last. I know the tower needs to be protected, but if you die, then I die. Osman stated, my death is no great loss, Mito, but the loss of the CCT is detrimental to the entire world. The loss of communication would be damning not only Vale but the entire world to separation. With the loss of the tower came the loss of communication. With that came isolation and receding into kingdoms for safety. With that came separation and the destruction of the peace that they had to so desperately striving to protect them. And with that came her chance to attack. One that would make this look childish in comparison. He was so distracted he didn't notice Mito walk over to his side until he placed a hand on his shoulder. This place is important, but don't sell yourself short just yet, sir. We still need you. Osman patted his hand. I saw Naruto and the others get off their airships and start to thin the herd of knights and Grim. Others are apprehending a White Fang after knocking them down. It might seem bad now, but there was a rumbling and shake through the room. It took a moment for them to realize it wasn't just a quake through the school, but through the entire city as well. They looked between each other before running to the window, having the best view of the city to the top of the tower. That's when they saw it. Massive monsters. It had holes and tears in its wings, and yet it sailed to the sky without trouble. Its head was massive, more bone armor around its skull than any other of its kind, and a mouth so big it looked like it could eat a bullhead whole. And the roar, the sound of it chilled them to the bone as the winged abomination flew over everything. Blobs of black ooze seeping out of its skin and peppering the ground beneath it. It was hard to tell whether the action was deliberate or not. But when the black ooze splashed against the ground, something happened. From that darkness emerged Grim of every type crawled out, readjusting to their new existence for an instant before going for the attack. Osman made to watch as the wyvern flew into the city. Dear God, Nita muttered in disbelief. Osman, is this real? The old headmaster had to gulp to swallow the lump in his throat. We need to do something. At least only remaining flagship shot at the others, and the other ships are being used to transport people. How do we, Minato? We need to find a way to stop that monster. Osman said with unnatural calmness. If that creature creates Grim, this only complicates the battle. The blonde husband looked out across the sky as the wyvern cut through the clouds in the light of the moon. He slowly drew his knife and looked down at it before gripping it tightly. I'll handle it. Hunting, on your right. Sasuke twisted around and sliced through the face of a creeper. We got him over here. He aimed his shotgun down and fired, launching himself into the air to join Cardinal's side and killing a massive Barbatusca. Watch out! A wall of goddess dirt and gravel shot up to ensnare the pack of wolves charging through the street. Before Sasuke could attack a crow, Glinda and Jiraiya slew the beasts first. Good work, kids. Ruby and Yang's uncle complimented them. Definitely making our lives a little easier. Cardin grumbled as he propped himself on the mist. We're putting our weight to you, old bastards. Sasuke wiped his cheek and caught his breath. It was the first chance that they had gotten to breathe since arriving in Vale. The Grim were restless, and they were hunters and soldiers down every street, fighting monsters and guiding civilians. So far, the hunters and students aided them had done a good job of taking back the city, but there was no end in sight to tonight's battle. Everyone, stay alert. The good witches studios ever warned them that there might be a lull at the moment, but any second now we'll be seeing more of them. Sasuke nodded and took his sword back up as he heard Jiraiya whisper to Chrome, "Is she always like this? Every party needs a pooper." He and all the other hunters prepared to fight before they stumbled on their feet when a powerful quake shook the ground. Sasuke looked up and saw a giant beast that cut through the sky, pelting the ground with black liquid that soon gave birth to more Grim. Dread and shock took his body up for an instant before they fell before another quake shake the street. Goliath rounded the corner and crushed the side of a building as it did. The giant behemoth stomped forward in its charge as Grim flanked its side. Pavement and concrete splintered under the pressure of its run as it cleared everything in its path. Sasuke watched it approach and wrestled between standing his ground or retreating back. However, the sudden eruption of pink crystals from the street skewered the lesser Grim and piercing the hooves of the Goliath. Maybe the hunters and students look on in shock. With the pain trumpeting, the Goliath attempted to break through the crystal, but the series of quick, violent explosions over its back and head made the Grim cry in pain and retreated. It turned into the street and toppled the buildings around it before disappearing from their sights. Forcing the massive Grim back was amazing, but Sasuke couldn't help staring in shock at the crystal lining the streets and the blonde bomber standing over them in a white Atlas uniform. "Hey!" The other yelled in disdain down at the hunters and students below him as he jumped down the crystal and onto the street. What are you assholes doing? Were you gonna knock your hard heads together and see what happens? Yep, definitely did. Hey, prick, we were more than ready to handle that thing ourselves. Crow argued back as he stepped up and matched the rowdy blonde's glare. Just because you drop in blowing it up like a fireworks show doesn't mean you did us any favors. And why the hell are your garbage entries firing on us? Look, gutter trash. It doesn't look like what those useless toy soldiers are doing. I'm trying to clean shit up before it gets past our knees. Okay, enough. Gurren appeared and forced herself between Deidara and Crow. "We don't have time for this. You guys are hunters, just right? Well, we could use some help. There's a building that collapsed in the street, and we think there are people still inside. We have taken care of it, but I'm worried about displacing the wrong boulder, and we would only nuke the problem. Then I may be of assistance." Glinda stepped forward and looked back at all of them. "I can handle lifting the debris up if you can recover anyone inside. We only just recovered this block, so I need the rest of you to build a perimeter to secure it. Students, I want you to spread out down the street and locate areas in need of our assistance. Fight if you must, but if it looks like it will be too much, step back and call us." As Glinda gave orders, Sasuke stared in disbelief at his two former associates standing in front of him. He'd last seen them carrying his brother after the fallen out. But now they were alive and dressed like Atlas soldiers. "What are you doing?" Deidara sharply interjected with a glare. "And this is why you abandoned us, wasn't it? So you can play being a huntsman? Then go and do it already." We'll still be here," Gurren said, her voice more accompanying than her partner's spiteful drawl. "We can talk after." Right. He nodded and focused back on his mission. He was supposed to protect Vale and meet up with his teammates as soon as possible. He didn't have time to waste, confused and wistful. As the students spread out to search the adjacent streets, Sasuke started jumping up the walls and reached the tops of the buildings. The young Uchiha started leaping from roof to roof while surveying the streets below. He cocked his gun and fired a stray shot down into any Grim or Knights he saw roaming the streets. If he continued at this pace, a powerful turret of blue fire shot up from the street and nearly evaporated Sasuke. He twisted in the air to avoid it, but the shift of momentum caused him to miss his target. He slammed into the edge of the next roof hard, losing grip of his sword and dropping down into the street below. "It's Uchiha, get him!" Sasuke tried to lift himself up, but the moment he raised his head, he saw White Fang boots swing in. His head shot back before a punch crashed against the back of his skull. Suddenly, Sasuke was surrounded and being attacked by several White Fang members, stomping on his body and looking body to keep him on the ground. He tried to yell for them to stop, but they refused to listen. So his fist wiped out to strike one in the crotch. He caught the foot of another and struck the side of their knee hard enough to earn a cry. He snapped up to his feet and floored one with an uppercut before he made his escape. He dove across the ground and reached out for his sword, only for a boot covered covered in milky white aura to stomp down on his left hand hard enough to crack the pavement beneath it. Sasuke writhed and screamed in pain as he felt the bones and nerves in his hands stinging like fire. He tried to pull his hand out, but it felt like an iron clamp was flattering his fingers. Well, Uchiha, Sasuke surprised to see him. Panting, Sasuke looked up to see Hana, was the one breaking his hand so bluntly. Slowly, Sasuke looked around and found the street around him filled with White Fang, who watched on as he was held in place. The pressure on his hand intensified as Han looked down. We've been waiting to find you. Hunting. She wasn't sure what was causing the knights to turn on them, but she doubted it was deliberate. Despite her not so gracious opinion of Atlas, Blake doubted they would turn their androids on people so brutally, especially when they had a point of aiming aiming at them and not the White Fang or Grim. So it was up to her and Weiss to clear the courtyard. Blake found a foothold in the air thanks to her teammates' glyphs. The cat phone launched herself off one, sliced through the night or Grim in her path. Left off another glyph in and repeated the numbers weren't thinning drastically, but at this rate they could handle the problem much faster. Blake dropped down between a group of White Fang members that were quickly coming up on her. Gamble's shroud switched to its sickle form before she tossed it up. She felt Wise take hold and grabbed the ribbon, yanking down and pulling the airs along with it. She turned her pull into a spin, rotating around and letting Wise circle around her rapidly as she formed the glyphs that released sickles and fire in every direction. They both slowed to a stop and looked around at all the beaten faunas and destroyed knights. With a quick look between each other, they nodded and started running back towards Beacon. Now that we have knights to worry about, this has gotten a lot more cumbersome. The knights are numerous, but as far as the abilities go, I don't think they'll match us. White's mission of the knights' abilities did little to ease Blake's worries. And true, they were mostly used for guard duty and holding Grim back, but enough of them could pose a threat. She had learned that lesson quite a few times during her White Fang days. Thankfully, a large number of them were easy to handle when there was someone to fight besides them. The 200s in training spotted two large Grim from a pool made by the Wyvern, one in Ursa Major and the other in Alpha Beowulf. The ebony-haired and ivory-haired fighters looked between each other and not before breaking off to follow each beast. The Beowulf's stride was great, and Blake was sure she'd never catch up if she was just running after it. But with a couple of her shadows, she propelled herself forward in time to cut the head of the beast. The cat found this rolled to a stop with both her katana and sheath drawn. With the look around, she stood back up and prepared to follow Weiss. Get back! And she heard a desperate, terrified cry a few meters away. But Blake turned and looked at the wall of the cafeteria. The brick and mortar crumbled away from the damage. She heard shots being fired before she approached the hole and peered in. There were bodies along the ground from many different schools. Some were killed by Grim. Some were killed other ways. And there was a student firing his gun at his assailant as he slowly stepped forward. Blake felt her heart stop and blood go cold as her body became heavy. She felt a rush of overwhelming emotions wreck her brain and freeze her body. Despite years of training and her instincts demanding she move, she couldn't do anything but stare at his back as he walked until he raised his red blade up. She moved without thinking and fired several shots. His blade twirled around and cut the bullets without even looking back at her. Run! She yelled at the fighting student, lighting a fire under him as he scrambled to his feet and ran. Once he was gone, Blake stepped out properly and faced the cruel, horrible terrorist at the center of his attack. Her former partner, Blake. Adam's voice was eerily calm and welcoming as he turned to look at her through his mask. It's been so long. I've been waiting to see you again. Hunting. Well, brothers and sisters of the White Fang, it looks like we have a captive audience in this young man. Sasuke hissed as the pain in his hand started spreading through his whole body. The recently released noble guard looked around at the others as he kept Sasuke's hand pinned under his foot. You all know who this is, right? You've seen his showing during the tournament, correct? Yes, this is one of the last true-blooded descendants of our vile enemies, the Uchiha, the cursed bloodline that hunted our people during the war and for generations before it. The people that gave birth to Mother Uchiha, the demonic soldier who slaughtered more people than any other and killed the village of Faunus without remorse. The massive horse looked down at the young Uchiha under his foot. What's you, Uchiha? Do you deny these facts? You! Sasuke took short breath and looked up at the enraged man. As his vision tunneled from the pain, he noticed just how many White Fang had gathered. Among all the similar looking people, he saw the old man they had fought with Gar, the blonde woman watching carefully as he was tortured, and a red-haired woman with a fox tail standing a few feet away from them. He pushed through the pain. You don't have to do this. You refuse to answer. Might as well be an admission of guilt. Now this world has not been kind to Faunus, but one silver lining was that your tainted kind was wiped from Earth. How many more of you are there? Han applied more pressure to Sasuke's hand as the ground cracked and he felt the bones pop. Refusing to voice his screams, the young huntsman bared through it. My mother and father were killed when I was young. I have no one else, and yet we have reports of those wannabe Uchihas continuing your racial cleansing at the urge of another Uchiha. I guess you're a liar on top of an abomination. Now then, Uchiha, I'm going to ask you a question, and if I don't get a proper answer, he stomped down as hard as he could, and the result was blood squirting out from under his aura-clad boot and along the street. Sasuke swore that even some of the White Fang gasped and gagged in shock at the punishment his hand received, but the pain was so much that he blacked out for an instant. To believe for a second that your hands are clean of blood, that you play at being a huntsman at this silly little school while ignoring the pain you've caused. So answer me, Uchiha, how many of our people have you killed? I caused one man's death, Sasuke admitted to the noble guard and anyone else that could hear. He was captured and taken into our camp for questioning. He was tortured. He broke. I was prepared to kill him in order to prove I could fight my family's fight as well, but I froze. And the man, the Faunus I had written off as just a terrorist, was a father, a man grieving for his lost daughter. He attacked me, nearly killed me, and was killed in response to that. Han scoffed and shook his head. See, if not directly this Uchiha, the second White Fang member I met, I had planned to kill. I had resolved myself, no matter what hesitation or doubt I might feel, to end their life. He continued. I found him wandering the streets. I attacked him. He fought and caused an accident nearby. I abandoned our fight and rushed to help people. I was nearly killed until I realized the boy I had tried to kill had followed me in to help. I thought I could kill him. I thought it would be easy, but one look at him and I realized I couldn't do it. We didn't fight. We stood together, and we still do now. Off the side of the red-haired fox stood up a little straighter. He made me want to be better. He made me want to be a huntsman and help people, regardless of race or allegiance. And from there, I have seen so many people struggle and fight for what they believe in and think is right. People flash in his mind, friends and family, and those he wanted to be so much more that pushed him on. I know you all have reasons for joining the White Fang. You're tired of the prejudice and those awful glances in your direction. Maybe you're here because you want someone to believe someone to live a better life, and this is how you see that happen. I don't know. I believe you all have your reasons, but I won't justify them. These people need me. I have people I needed to get back to, and you all are risking their lives for your reasons alone. So this is what I offered you. Just stop and walk away. Walk away now and leave before this gets any worse, because when I get up and take my sword, Sasuke looked up with red eyes, I won't be plagued by hesitation anymore. Some of the White Fangs stepped back nervously. The other noble guards looked between each other silently, but only Han shook his head in disdain. Arrogant, even in punishment. Well, Uchiha, if you are so certain that you can take this fight back from us, then a large rock broke against the back of the horse's head. All eyes turned in the direction it came from. Cardin yelled at him, "Hey, asshole! Aren't you supposed to be some kind of freedom fighter or something? All I see are a bunch of pathetic wannabe huntsmen that decided they like to play dress up." Cardin spiked another rock across the street, and Han smashed it in the air. The other members of Cardinal walked out and joined their leader's side in facing down the White Fang. If you lot want to test yourself against the real deal, we're happy to oblige. Han shook his head. Brothers, take care of these. It was at that moment when Han was distracted that Sasuke realized what was happening. A guard dropped down from above and landed in the street beside him. With a wave of his hand, he channeled a torrent of sand and dust into Han's chest and knocked him off of Sasuke's hand. The Uchiha took the chance to scramble to his feet, grab his katana, and run away with Gaara and his hand hung limply at his side. However, a wall of blue flame cut them off in their retreat. The two young men slid to a stop and turned back as the noble guards stepped up to face them. Sasuke held his sword tightly in his hand, in his good hand, as he hissed when he felt the finger on his left hand twitch. Gaara looked at his side. "Sasuke, your hand. Don't worry. You need immediate focus. Sasuke stabbed his katana into the ground and grabbed his hand before stuffing it under his right armpit. He groaned in pain as the pressure of squeezing down on his mangled hand was unbearable. His breathing was sharp and pained, but he picked up his sword again and pointed it at his foes. Out of sight, Gaara. Roshi spoke up. Do you really wish to make this your fight? Would you abandon a chance at a better life fighting against this criminal? I don't know what you mean. Gaara stood proudly at his side as his form became shrouded in sandy brown aura. He isn't a criminal, but one of the noblest men I have ever met. One with enough kindness to offer the people who torture and ridicule him a chance to walk away from their evil deeds before it is too late. When I see that, how can I possibly step away from his side? I'm disappointed by your decision. The old red-haired man shook his head in summoning his semblance as well as red aura enveloped him. But if this is your choice, then we have none other than to... A pair of large red hands circled Roshi's chest and lifted him up. The fox monsters lifted him up and turned to spike him down into the street. Roshi bounced off the concrete and left melted black pools of asphalt where he impacted. What the hell are you doing, Red Death? The blonde noble guard yelled. Have you lost your mind so close to our victory? This is not my victory. You are not my brothers and sisters. The fox woman cried out in anger, her entire body cloaked in aura and the mask she wore in her hand. She clenched her fist and shattered the mask in her hand as she stood in front of Sasuke and Gaara. I am done sacrificing pieces of my soul. I am done being a lifeless tool, and to hell with the consequences and whoever might get hurt in the process. I won't fight for you. I won't fight for him. I won't fight for anyone else. The White Fang looked between each other before channeling their semblances. The fox woman beside Sasuke was already prepared for battle. As Gaara's features disappeared behind his aura, Sasuke took a deep breath and focused his sight on Han. A layer of purple aura covered his body. Hunting. Ruby stood on the edge of the flagship and looked out over everything. Usually the sight of Beacon and Dale would be breathtaking, but now it was just terrifying. The smoke rose up as far as she could see. Even up here, she can see buildings topple and crash into the street. And the Grim, that monster flying through the air. How could there be so many Grim at once? No. Ruby shook her head and focused back on the task at hand. This was the only Atlas ship left flying in the air after it had finished blasting the rest out of the sky. General Wood said he was going to reclaim the ship from whoever took it, but then his ship fell out of the sky when the robots turned him. He might be dead. How many more people could die before the night was over? The thought petrified her. The idea she might not see her teammates or friends again left her feeling cold. She wished that they were here with her now. That they weren't all separated during this crisis and could handle this together. But she was a huntress. She had a duty to fight and take this ship back for the people's safety. As she approached the desk, she spotted an Atlas soldier staggering out of the door and falling to his knees. She dashed over to his side and saw the blood down his face. Are you okay? Who did this to you? The soldier only panted, too shocked to answer her. Okay, stay here, Al. She spotted the glint of metal in the corner of her eye. The injured soldier pulled out a thin sword and swung for her head. Ruby put some distance between them and reached for her weapon before the soldier lunged for her. She drew her scythe and parried the blade away before spinning crescent rolls around and forcing her assailant to retreat. The tall, bloody soldier stood up straight with a cocky smirk on his face. A pattern appeared over his body and flitted away to reveal a short, petite young girl with pink and brown hair. Ruby recognized her as the girl that had helped Torchwick get away. Well, I'd say I'm surprised to see you here, but honestly, the surprise would be if you didn't somehow show up. Ruby gulped and turned to look behind her. Standing by the doorway with his cane in hand, Roman Torchwick smirked her way. The young huntress gripped her scythe harder as she realized she was stuck between two enemies with no support. Oh, Red, this was a bad choice. Hunting, he couldn't stop for anything, not to leap forward, slashing a creep across the head with his kodachi as his orange hand crushed an nurse's arm. The moment he landed, he twisted and cut an android's weapon before it could shoot Sun. He felt his monkey friend Kill Wolf behind him to return the favor. The fox ran forward and slid on his knees under Yatsuhashi's wide swing. Jumping back up to his feet, he kicked another robot in the head and felt his back crash into another. He panted, "How are we doing? Holding up," Kiba answered. "I love killing monsters, but if we keep doing it, but we keep going at this rate, we're gonna run ragged." Huh? Is that worry in your voice? Well, we can't all be like our excellent leader and just be too stupid to realize how bad this is. Naruto laughed but cursed instantly as he realized that his partner was right. They had killed a lot of Grim and Elysian Knights already, but it seemed never ending. How much longer before they were run completely ragged and couldn't even fight anymore? As he pondered this question, Naruto spotted a yellow flash through the air. He looked up and saw his father drop down from the tower before teleporting down to the ground. He dashed in the direction and cut everything in his path. Dad, what? My dad just dropped down and ran like a bat out of hell. Where's he going? I don't know. Kiba answered his rhetorical question. That Tsude Inuzaka turned to look at his partner and saw the conflict in his face. Realizing what he wanted, he sighed and knocked his fingers on his leader's back. Check it out and come back as fast as you can. Naruto nodded firmly and chased after his father as he rounded Beacon. Some Grim tried to attack him along the way, and he quickly dealt with them. As Naruto came around the school, he saw an improvised landing zone being utilized while the main one was being cleared of Grim. He came up closer and spotted soldiers and hunters holding the line, while civilians who had been exploring Beacon panicked. The whiskered fox pushed his way through the crowd of crying, worried people as he spotted his father speaking to a pilot. Dad, Naruto, he turned around. What are you doing here? I was fighting with the others, so before I saw you drop down from the tower. What's happening? Listen, man, I don't know what to tell you. The pilot yelled at them over the engine. I was told to transport civilians, and that was it. I'm not supposed to be here in Huntsman on dangerous missions. Look, do you see that thing up there? He pointed up to the wyvern making rounds over the school and city. That monster is only going to make the panic worse, and more people will get killed. I'm not asking you to fight it for me, but we need someone skilled to help us move around it while we fight. I get it, but that guy ain't me. Ask someone else. Mito clicked his tongue and moved over to the next bulkhead before Naruto stopped him. Are you going to fight that thing? We can't move the bulkheads without taking a huge risk while it's in the air. Plus, it's dropping Grim everywhere. Where it flies over, which only makes this problem worse. It has to be dealt with. You aren't going to handle it yourself, are you? No, I was going to contact Jiraiya and a few of the others to help me take care of it. I don't think I can handle it by myself. He then looked at his son, and I'm not taking you with me. You just said you could use help. I know some people who are good shooters and can fire from a ship. His father didn't look convinced as he pressed on. Tell me it wouldn't be a little bit easier if I helped you. Mito and Naruto stared each other down before the older blonde relented. I'll think about it. Naruto grinned as his father turned around. I'm going to keep looking for a pilot. You go contact a few of those strong shooters and we'll make a plan. Got it. Naruto walked out of the landing zone and entered back into the crowd of civilians. He worked over his scroll before he noticed people standing in his way. Sorry, young man. Do you know when they'll take us? I'm sorry, but they don't. We've been standing around for nothing. We need to get out of here before the Grim get us. Why are they making us wait? Mommy, it's okay, sweetie. People. Naruto called out to the crowd in an effort to calm them down. I'm sorry we're making you wait, but we're trying to figure out the best plan to get you all out of here. We don't want to risk transporting you while our wyvern is in the air. So we're forming a plan too. One person in the crowd lunged out and reached for his face. He lurched back to avoid it, but the hand swooped down instead and crushed the scroll in his hand instead. He with unbelieving speed, his attacker leapt up and wrapped his legs around Naruto's neck before yanking down and slamming the blonde's head into the ground. It stung, but he was lucky to summon his aura in time before his head cracked it like an egg. He forced his hand between his neck and the leg around it before slipping out. Naruto drew his sword and swung into the dense white blade of his foe, causing the civilian to scream and stumble backwards. The blonde pressed forward and struck with every side, being thwarted by his opponent's strategic reflexes as he knocked his short sword away each time. He reached out and grabbed his attacker's arm before he could slip away. When he stopped, Naruto finally got a chance to look at his white-haired attacker and the strange bone-like weapon in his hand. Naruto hissed him. I don't know who you are, but you made a serious mistake. His eyes panned over to the hunters making their way through the crowd to apprehend his assailant. I hope it was worth it. They were blown off their feet by the serious explosions behind him. Naruto slammed into the ground as all four ears started ringing in pain. As his brain shook and recoiled from the explosions, he turned over on his back and looked at the fiery remains of all the bulkheads that had been perked on the platform. Dad, he whispered. Dad! And he charged into the burning debris and pushed his way through. He used his semblance to lift the large pieces of broken ships out of his way as he dug in. Over the sound of burning wreckage and screams of screaming people retreating to beacon, Naruto called out his father with no response to return. He saw burning bodies in the wreckage of the ships, but after some searching, he finally found his father on the ground. He dropped down by his side and saw his chin and part of his neck had sustained burns from the explosion. Naruto carried his father away from the burning ships and laid him down away from the wreckage. Dad, wake up! His father gasped and wheezed in response, but his eyes didn't open. Dad, oh my! Looked like his espionage was his esophagus was burned from all the smoke and fire. That would be bad if not treated properly. His head snapped up and saw standing next to his bone-wielding assailant was a tall, pale, skinny man with silky long hair. Naruto didn't recognize either of these men, but he seized with rage as he growled, "Was this you? Did you do this?" "Yes, I apologize. We were advised not to let people leave just yet in order to cause the most panic and fear," the strange gentleman replied almost casually as ships crashed down into the burning bodies within them. Kimimaro here was sent in to get people's attention as I set off the bombs. "You fucking bastards!" Naruto summoned his semblance and took up his blade. "You'll pay for this. Oh, that semblance. You really are one of the noble guards, aren't you? How fascinating." The strange man's smile unnerved Naruto. "This really is a serendipitous chance for us to get what we want. What the hell are you talking about? Well, you see, the rules for us working with the White Fang is that I cannot experiment on any of the noble guards while we work together. It would be a little rude for me to dissect the experiment on the heroes of the White Fang, even if finding out more about your unique semblance and aura characteristics would benefit our cause. Young Adam was adamant that I did not put a hand on any of you. But you," Naruto shuddered in fright, "you're a huntsman, a brave and noble soul that would give his life to save others during times like this. It would not be unexpected for you to suddenly go missing and be reported as killed in action." The man smiled knowingly. "We'll take you back with us and start testing as soon as possible. Your healing factor, your upper limits, how much fight you have in you. It will all be necessarily information to help us learn." A sweat dropped over his head, over the side of his face as Naruto snarled, "Over my dead body! Oh dear boy, I'm sorry for misleading you, but of the many things we'll be doing together, death is not a luxury you'll be afforded." End of chapter 80.